Thank God I'm not in the dating world because I don't know how Bill Belichick is able to handle all the malarkey going on at Chapel Hill. But this is what you paid for in North Carolina, so embrace what is going to be 2025 and more than likely the future of Tar Heel football. Welcome on into the Overtime Drive right here on SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. You know what Thursday is? Mailbag episode. We have a dozen plus questions to get through on tonight's episode. We also are going to break down Arkansas's schedule for 2025, which is massive when you look at what could be a prove-it year for Sam Pittman and really even Hunter Yurachek. But real quickly, like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show. Where we get your podcast listening systems, follow us on the socials, link in the description. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, Dave at Dave Shumate SEC. Us at SEC Unfiltered, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. And as always, this episode is proudly partnered with our friends over at FanDuel. Go visit FanDuel.com/SECU and join today and get $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. The NBA playoffs is well into action. We have the NHL postseason kind of starting to wind down through the first round. MLB season's not going anywhere anytime soon. And we also are going to have way too early college football projections heading into 2025. So whatever tickles your fancy, go visit FanDuel.com/SECU. Win $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Schuster, how the hell are you?
Bear, I'm pretty good right now because speaking of Arkansas, I'm glad you brought him up. We're talking about him in the sport. Hey, winning me some money tonight. It was a good spot for him. Arkansas was due for a win. Texas was due to drop one. This was their toughest road SEC series. So, no, I think, as you know, Bear, you follow baseball. You're a big Stros guy. Anything can happen in one day. As again, so we were talking with Harrison. I still think Texas could go win the next two, win the series. But tonight, short week again for the Friday night starter traditionally for Texas. Yeah, I mean, again, it's tough to go win in Fayetteville. You got them in a bad spot.
Just a bad game. This is a really bad game. Like
up to baseball.
It's not even negatively about what is Texas, because Texas still could easily win the national championship this year with the way they've been playing. It's just, again, everyone's due for something. Chicago White Sox are one of the worst teams in baseball. They were due for a win. They won 8-0 today.
I think the Rockies beat the Braves.
The Rockies are on pace to finish with 25 wins this year, and they just got their 5th win heading into the month of May. Like, everyone is due from time to time. It's just Texas time. It was just Arkansas's time. Jam-packed mailbag episode. I know that we were supposed to have Trey Wallace on tonight. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, we had to move that. He will be on next week. So if you were tuning in for that, don't worry. He's still going to be on. It's not going to happen tonight at 8 o'clock, which means we have a lot of mailbag questions, and we can get to all the mailbag questions. Sometimes when we get the mailbag, we have to kind of throw some to next week, and if I forget about it or we accidentally delete the notes, they're never answered. So that will not be the case tonight because of every question. And by the way, if you want to go ahead and join in the mailbag, simply comment over here, get your question on in, and we will answer it live on air. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're watching, just get your question in. We'll answer it. Be a part of the conversation. We have over a dozen questions. Let's not waste any time. First up, Jordan D writes in, Dave, will the SEC be a defensive conference this season?
Well, I was looking at it, Bear. NFL draft this past year, I think there was 9 SEC defensive players that went in the first round. This year, I saw Jordan Reed, who I don't know Jordan, but he does a good job.
I know Jordan very well. He's a very nice dude, and he does great work for ESPN.
Yeah, he does a good job. He had 8 in his 2026 mock. So, again, I think some of this, Bear, in my opinion, again, you have traditionally Georgia, who's, since Kirby Smart's been there, been a top 3 defense, if not the best in the SEC for the past 8-9 years. I think it's really going to come down to how good is Arch Manning? What step does Garrett Nussmeier take? Does Lenore Sellers improve? Tennessee's quarterback situation right now. Ty Simpson. I think we'll talk about a guy later, Jackson Arnold. Like, there's just a lot of unknown at some of these quarterback spots. Gunnar Stockton, you can keep naming them. I mean, Diego Pavia is one of the things I know what to expect every Saturday going into. Vanderbilt's quarterback, I have more confidence in heading into the season than I do at some places like Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. That's wild to say. So I think, yes, I am going to lean it's going to be one of the better years in the SEC in a while defensively, because I think it's been dropped off a little bit. I think it's some of just because of the nature of football. It's offensive heavy right now. That'll revert back to the defensive style, run the football here in the next 5 years, I think, at some point. But I think it's really going to come down to how good these quarterbacks can be, Bear. So I'm going to go, yes, I think it's going to be a defensive season, but that's because I think we're going to have some quarterbacks who underwhelm. If you told me the quarterbacks over-exceeded expectations, I would say, again, it's going to be a offensive year just because that's the most important position in all sports. If you have one, you have a chance to put up big numbers. So I'm going to lean, because I think the offense is going to be down a little bit more just as much as I think the defenses are talented and going to be good.
See, you and I have completely differing opinions when it comes to quarterbacks. A lot of people are coming out with their top 10 rankings going into the year. And I get it. We're eventually going to do ours, and we'll do all SEC, and then we'll just do general. But the general and the SEC are very close to me. 6 of my top 10 quarterbacks are in the SEC just going into this year. And that's not including a Ty Simpson that I haven't seen play, a Bo Pabula that I barely seen play, an Arch Manning that I barely seen play. So that's just speaking of the volume of good quarterbacks that I already have a solid feeling about on who they are and what I think that they can continue to grow in. And then you throw in those names. And then you throw in maybe a solid overall change of scenery for a Jackson Arnold. And then you throw in a Bo Pabula and what he could be. And you say to yourself, okay, well, if all these quarterbacks are actually living up to the expectations that were set at the beginning of the year, you may have some really good defensive players, and the SEC is always going to be riddled with great defensive players. And there's going to be a lot of names that right now aren't being talked about, and they probably deserve to be, that will break on out and find their way into transforming toward a household name in the SEC and really in college football. But I just look at what I know about this quarterback overall room for most of the SEC. The guys that are unproven have so much untapped potential that I'm going to bank on they will eventually hit their stride. The guys that are proven, kind of what you see is what you get, and a lot of them I kind of like. Garrett Nussmeier, I understand that there is a big what-if factor when it comes to the run game, when it comes to the turnover rate, but I still like it. I still like the way he plays. I still like the way that he's able to deliver strikes. I still think that there is more left in the tank that is unfolding underneath him with Joe Sloan. I think Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway, there's still more left in the tank. We already know about Arch. I agree with you 100%. Diego Pavia, that's somebody to where it's a what you see is what you get type of quarterback. I don't find that to be a negative. I say to myself, hey, if I know that this is what works and what doesn't, I'll gladly take that in. And then you throw in some other names like a Gunnar Stockton and a Ty Simpson that, hey, if they're just average to slightly above average, Marcel Reed for that instance too. Well, the SEC may every single week be going down a path of where, hey, if quarterback is on point, they're winning this football game. And we feel really good about it being a high-scoring process along the way, where it's a 34-30 final score or a 28-21 final score. Like, those are things that it may speak more volume about where the quarterback is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I kind of go back to you were bringing up, would you have 5? Sorry, but you said, what, 5 or 6?
6.
Yeah, and again, you may not be off from that there should be 5 to 6 SEC quarterbacks in the top 10 quarterback category in college football in 25. I just don't know if it's just a great quarterback class just in general. I think it's got one of the more going into the season. You see some of these draft projections.
All right, wait, you're just talking
a
about
lot of these dudes have a lot of things to. I mean, if you told me Cade Klubnik is the number 1 overall pick in next draft, from what I have seen from Cade Klubnik right now, and again, that's not a fair. His college career is still to be determined.
I mean, he's QB1 for me going into this year. I'll just be completely transparent.
What?
He's QB1 for me going into this year.
Yeah, and I don't think people are wrong. My point is I just don't think it's a great quarterback class. I don't disagree with people who want to put him one. I think that's fair. I just don't think it's a great quarterback class, or I should say a very unproven quarterback class. I mean, again, he's got Lenore Sellers at 4. And again, Lenore Sellers is good, but Lenore Sellers at 4? I'm not saying that's the wrong pick. It's just like, dang, it's not a great quarterback class. Huh?
Now, hold up. Are you talking about quarterback class like for next year's draft kind of feel?
Yeah, for 2026. Okay. That's where you were saying you're 6 out of your top 10 from college. So I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But then I would probably question how good is the quarterback class just in general. How good are the top 10 quarterbacks this year compared to years past? I think he's a little above, under or below average.
So for me personally, when I talk about college football quarterbacks and I do my top 10 rankings, their factoring in the NFL has nothing to do with it. at all. Just for me personally. I look at what you are in the Saturday game, which again is why I had Jackson Dart.
Which again, I would still say was probably below average. What if it's
sure?
What
but that was why I had Jackson Dart going into last year as the quarterback, as QB1.
Dude, Jackson Dart could be one in this class.
But
going into this season, if you told me Jackson Dart was back at Ole Miss, he is easily a top 3 quarterback in the sport heading into it.
But he was a top 3 quarterback for me last year. But I still didn't think that he was a ready-made NFL starting quarterback, and that's my difference. Is I don't look entirely into that because Arch Manning is a name that constantly is getting
quarterback class this year.
It wasn't, but like Arch Manning, Vegas odds have him as the number 1 player to go to be the top pick in 2026. And shame on you people who are betting this type of money. And I'm telling you this because I love FanDuel and I want FanDuel to go ahead and make sure that we are continually a proud partner with them. But still, Vegas is trying to go ahead and sell you short because Arch isn't going anywhere. But if you told me that at the end of the season, Arch is the best quarterback in college football, that's where my brain is. And I think that when you look at that, you look at Diego Pavia, when you look at what could be John Mateer, when you look at the growth of maybe Austin Simmons and what he's going to be and Bo Pabula, they may end up all being very mid-level quarterbacks in the NFL level. But for college, they may be the reason why a 9-3 season turns into an 11-1 season, or a 7-5 season turns into a 10-2 season. And now we're in the college football playoff hunt. Like, it's very possible that just that one guy could have such a huge magnitude to the success of what the talent is.
Yeah, and I think that guy would probably get drafted. I feel like the quarterback, you rank the quarterbacks in college probably isn't far off from what most NFL guys have either, because again, you add such a high demand position. I mean, what quarterback here recently, Bears, had a big year in college football and it went undrafted? I mean, that doesn't happen.
Well, Bailey Zappi was like a name
in college. Your NFL probably sees you very similar.
Like Bailey Zappi had such a great year for Western Kentucky, but he was a 4th-round pick. I mean, like if we're going with that notion, I mean, Dylan Gabriel's had some great seasons and he was the 3rd-round pick. Like he was never in the running to be a number 1 overall selection. So those are all just little things that kind of go into it. I'm not disagreeing with you, but from like an offensive perspective, I think it could be an offensive-driven league if quarterback play is really, really above average, but that also factors in with, hey, can we run the football? Like, humor me this for a second, then we can move on. Like, imagine that the SEC is so codependent on its ground game. And, like, every single school has 1 or 2 dudes that is averaging over 120 yards per game. Like LSU with Caden Durham, he's averaging 125 yards. And then Rasul Faison at South Carolina is averaging 102 yards. And then they finally actually put an emphasis on rushing the football in Alabama in year 2 underneath Kalen DeBoer. And then the A&M guys have each like 89 yards per game. And then Missouri has Ahmad Hardy going off for 220 every other matchup.
You got every running game going for...
That's what I'm saying. But but would that justifiably make it an offensive conference this year? Because that's the other.
Oh, that happens, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
That means we got a front 7 problem on the defensive side in this league too.
And
if don't have that many guys averaging over 100 yards a game.
And I don't think that you have a front 7 problem. But I also will say that there are a lot of young talents that are coming on in, and some transfers at major programs, i.e., at Georgia, who just brought in the Army kid at Elodier. When you throw that in, if they can't transition pretty quickly and adapt to what is SEC football, you may have a few games or so, maybe even a couple of quarters where you're just unable to stop the run and an offense feels like, hey, we can do anything against a Georgia-led defense or a Florida-led defense. And then you get it all together and you're right back at square one. Like, I think that's not an all out of left field kind of conversation to have.
Yeah. No, yeah, again, you're higher on the quarterbacks, which is fine going into the year. That's where we disagree. But again, if you've told me the quarterbacks over-exceeded, yeah, it'd be an offensive league for sure.
Chris H. writes in, is Michigan a must-win for Brent Venables at Oklahoma? Real quickly, I'm just going to say no, it's not a must-win. I think it's a much positive outlook for him for the rest of the year with a win. I'll give it that. Because if I actually view that to be one of the bigger crossroad games in college football this year, not from an SEC perspective, but just from an overall college game perspective, Oklahoma is a team that many people think could actually be decent and go on a run. And I'm one of them that says 9-3 is not off the table. But you have to beat a team like Michigan to prove that you're able to hold your own against SEC opponents. And sometimes the schedule doesn't bode well in your favor like it doesn't for Oklahoma. But one of those wins almost guarantees you to be, I would say, bowl eligible with your schedule and certainly in more of line to get to that 9-3 range. But I don't think that gets a must-win game because of the same thing for Michigan. Michigan at this point, what are we as a program? We brought in a brand new quarterback in Bryce Underwood. We have a veteran in Mike Keene that's going to start off the year, brand new offensive coordinator. Feel good about our defense. Added in some really good pieces in the portal this past offseason, and added in another running back that we feel like maybe gets us back to our bread and butter of smash mouth football that we had underneath Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, if we play up to our standard, 9 wins is also possible. So I think it's a fork road game for both these teams, but it won't define, I think, Oklahoma's season. There's another game that we're going to talk about a little bit later on that I think will define Oklahoma's season. So it's a feather in the cap kind of moment, I think, for BV. He's not going to be on the hot seat for losing this game, and if he's fired because of this was one of the games where he failed to meet expectations, and Oklahoma just took the backseat to a Big Ten squad.
Yeah, I'm not going to say a game in week 2 is a must win. I mean, we've seen Florida go get embarrassed week 1 last year at home against Miami, turn around, win 8 games. So again, any game the first 4 weeks of the season, first third of the season, isn't a must win that area. Now I'll say this a little bit, going to contradict myself here because I said first 4 weeks. I'll say 3. I think they need to get one of the Michigan and Auburn games. So their first 4: Illinois State at home, Michigan at home, Temple at the link randomly, Auburn.
If they lose that game, that's just one to where.
Yeah, that may be one of the more random games I can remember an SEC team traveling to. Auburn at home. I think they do need to get one of Auburn, Michigan. If you told me they're 2-2 after their first 4, I don't feel great about this season. They need to get one. I'm with you though, Bear. Michigan by itself, just standalone game. You ask us that question or ask me that question, you can't. I'm gonna say no. It's too early. But I feel worse about you though, for sure, because like as you mentioned, right, Mikey Keene, who started for us first year at UCF, if he comes into Norman and beats you in your house in year 4 for Brent Venables, that would be very, very disappointing. But I think they do need to go 1-1. They need to get one.
Okay, now humor me.
Of Michigan and Auburn.
Humor me. You just said Mikey Keene. If Mikey Keene wins that game, that's a major concern, in my opinion, for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's a major concern. If Bryce Underwood wins that game, then I go back to my own narrative. Okay, well, you know what? Again,
but I'll still be a little concerned about that. A true freshman came into his first road game and won that. Like, that's a little – I mean, think about the context of it. It's like, I don't really care what Bryce Underwood looks like in that game. I mean, I'm not going to hold that game against him good, bad, or indifferent. It's just – I mean, yeah, you'd be impressed if he went and won that, but – if I'm Oklahoma, I don't know. Do you feel worse losing to the true freshman in his first road game, who obviously has the much higher ceiling? But you're right. Mikey Keene, very winnable.
I think that's the difference. You come away impressed if you win with Bryce Underwood. You come away concerned if you lose to Mikey Keene. And, like, there's no middle ground there. Like, if Bryce Underwood loses to Oklahoma, okay, well, it's his first road test. It's not that big of a deal. If Mikey Keene loses to Oklahoma, okay, it's not that big of a deal. He was always a stopgap guy until Underwood feels ready. If you're Oklahoma, it's a bigger deal because of, again, if you lose to Bryce Underwood and he ends up going on a run to where there's a shot that they win the Big Ten, they go to the college football playoff, and he is the X factor and why, okay, you lost to a team that ended up making the postseason because of their quarterback play was just so much better than we anticipated. If you lose to Mikey Keene with how many other faults are currently on this Michigan squad, you have a problem. Like, that's the difference, I think, when it comes to Oklahoma in that sense.
Yeah. No, I'll circle. They need to be 3-1 after the first 4.
David H. writes in, is Texas running back C.J. Baxter going to be the comeback kid of 2025?
Now, when we phrase this from David H., is it like who has a bounce back from an injury or who has a bounce back from a lesser? I mean, if I'm saying bounce back, I mean, it's got to be 2 guys from an injury, right? Blake Shapen and CJ Baxter would be the 2.
Okay, so let's do this. Grand scheme of things. Anything is on the table. Injury, regression, didn't play well last year, whatever. Let's go with that.
I mean, overall, he played well from a normal player standpoint, but I think from his ceiling standpoint, I think he could have got more out of Caden Proctor last year. But, yeah, I think C.J. Baxter's a really good one that nobody's going to be talking about going into the season because he got hurt in fall camp last year.
Yeah.
People didn't remember his name. But, yeah, I think definitely – I mean, Texas really could have used him. I mean, you could make the case like he was a literal missing piece to them beating Ohio State in the semis. Not saying officially they would have done it, but obviously would have given a much better shot. I think it's a pretty good one. But, yeah, Blake Shapen's the injury one. That would be keeper. I'll go Caden Proctor, though.
If we were going injury-based, CJ Baxter's the right answer because if you do lose Jaden Blue, yeah, you have Wisner back, but let's be real. Wisner was always going to be the secondary runner behind Baxter. Baxter became the first freshman since Ricky Williams to start a game in his first ever start. Like, that's what we talk about with CJ Baxter. But I think also, if we're going to go that pathway, we can also go with another pathway, which also would be injury kind of based. I like Nick Anderson at LSU. I think that there's not enough people talking about what he can be on the outside for Garrett Nussmeier. And you got to remember what he did when he was at Oklahoma in 2023. 38 catches, a little under 800 yards. He averaged like 21 yards a play, 10 touchdowns, freshman All-American, and he's going to get better quarterback play. Because let's just call it as is. Whether or not we agree that Garrett Nussmeier is going to win the Heisman Trophy and take LSU to the national championship, what you know about Garrett Nussmeier versus what you knew about Jackson Arnold and Dylan Gabriel, you probably would take the upside of what you have in Garrett Nussmeier. So when I look at that, that's enough for me to say, okay, Nuss versus DG, Nuss versus what I know in Jackson Arnold. I'm going to take what I believe is the best fit right now and say that he's going to flourish in the system underneath Joe Sloan. So I go Nick Anderson as my comeback player this year.
Our guy Jordan Reed had him going in the first round.
Exactly.
He had him at right here. Who do you have him go to? I remember it's the Rams. Where are the Rams? Oh, here we go. The Chargers. Sorry, Nick Anderson at 22. Because he said his first sentence, there aren't many clear top options in the receiver class right now, which, yeah, I would agree with.
It's not again, if he ends up going pro, then that kind of speaks volume on how well he plays.
God, if you're an Oklahoma fan, doesn't that make you sick?
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, there's no other way to put it. It makes you sick. It makes you very sick. Just no matter how you want to phrase it. Coleman R. writes in, Cole, what is Auburn's ceiling in your opinion? Dave is obviously higher on them heading into the year. Okay, so for me personally, I think that they're a 9-win team is the ceiling. I just don't believe that they're going to be able to get to that 10-win marker. And that's not to say that they will lose both the Iron Bowl and the oldest rivalry in the South, because both those games are at your hair. And so that changes the way that I view those matchups. Death taxes at Sanford, you're losing. Death taxes in Bryant-Denny, you're losing. On the Plains, all bets are off, in my opinion, especially in those rivalry matchups. But the thing that I wonder about when it comes to Auburn is the same thing that I've wondered about with Hugh Freeze for a while. You're going to win that big game. You're going to be able to hold your own in a matchup that a lot of people are counting you out in. Can you not lose the game that you should be favored in? Can you not lose against a Missouri squad like you did last year? Can you not lose to a Vanderbilt squad like you did last year? Can you not lose to Arkansas? Can you not lose to Oklahoma when they're still implementing a brand new offensive personnel with wide receivers that we don't know who they're going to be? So I feel like that until I see what is this offense, because the defense is still going to be fine. I like the weaponry and I like the run game, and I even still like the offensive line for the most part. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic and say Auburn can get in that 9-win range. It wouldn't shock me if they were able to get over that hump because they have the talent to do so. But if you're also banking on what is the current expectation for me with Auburn, they get there in that 8-4 range. Yeah, 8-4 range. And that's kind of what Hugh Freeze, I think, needs to get to right now. You get to 8-4, you're back for a fourth season. If you go to 5-7, you're out of a job. And I think that both are possible, but it all comes down to quarterback play. And how quickly are you willing to pull the strings on Jackson Arnold if he is not the answer? And also, how quickly do you believe, hey, we're in a really, really good spot that Deuce Knight's progression, we can turn to him. No questions asked. We'll be good.
Yeah, no, Barry. I mean, add in too. You were big on schedules. I mean, I think that helps. That's a game or two difference for a lot of teams each year. And Auburn's schedule, very beneficial. That's why I was down. They lost 8 games last year. Barry, what would you take right now? Our buddies over at FanDuel have Auburn's team win total at 7.5 right now. What are you doing if you had to put money on it right now?
Well, right now I haven't gone 8-4, so I take the over. But I want to see how the offense looks throughout fall camp. I want to see what do we know about Jackson Arnold with an entire offseason to build that rapport with the wide receivers. He didn't play in the spring game. Now, they held him out because they were being cautious with him. That doesn't scare me off of an 8-win season. But what do we remember last year about Jackson Arnold when he was at Oklahoma? And there were reports that I refused to listen to because I just thought, okay, well, it's practice. It's not that big of a deal. He was having turnovers, bad turnovers, consistent turnovers. and he was still making the same mistakes from day one on day 15. If that's what we're going to get, I'm taking the under because I don't think that Deuce Knight is ready to start. And when he is ready to start, it may be too late to get to that 8-win range. But that's where I'm at right now when it comes to what is going to be Auburn. That week 1 matchup in Waco, it's not just one of the more underrated games to begin the college football season. It's also one of the ones to where I think you are going to find out a lot about what two quarterbacks that are drastically trying to change a program's culture, especially when it comes to that. I think that's something you have to pay attention to. That's one of the more underlying things from that matchup, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's all going to come down to the quarterback spot. We've seen that. They've lived and died with it the first 2 years of Hugh Freeze. But I am high on this defense. Second year with DJ Durkin. I think they could kind of have that 1-2 punch this year that South Carolina had last year with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, with Keldrick Falk, who Jordan Reed has going in the first round as well. And the people I talked to at Auburn, Karan Crawford, they say he's unblockable, that buck spot right now. And again, second year with DJ Durkin, those defenses always improve tremendously, going back to Ole Miss and at Texas A&M. I expect the same thing in Auburn. The defense has caught my eye. But again, I'm totally in agreement with you and everybody else. Auburn's ceiling, Auburn's season will be determined by the quarterback position.
Crawford's the kid from Sam Houston, right?
App State.
App State, that's it. I know they added in a kid from Sam Houston. I wasn't sure entirely.
Sorry, it's Arkansas State. Arkansas State. He was on the team last year.
Patrick writes in.
They said.
Patrick writes in, thoughts on Vandy heading into the season? They seem to feel like they're under the radar right
now. I agree. I mean, let me go to that win total right now. They're 4.5. What's your thoughts on
the win total for Vandy?
It's 4.5 right now, Bear, and our buddies over at FanDuel. What's your thoughts?
That's an easy over.
Bear says it's free money.
That's free money. Because I don't know if they'll be bowl eligible again. I don't know if they'll be in that 8-win range. I think that the expectation should be to go to a bowl game from here on out with Clark Lee because you've done it. And I think that you are slowly turning into a place where you're never going to land elite transfers. But you have an opportunity to land some really good plug-and-play additions that will better your roster, especially from that G5 level, trying to make the jump up to the power forward level. And there's a lot of talent that's at that stage that could easily help you become a winnable plus where you do win a football game, but not enough to win a national championship. And so I think that that's what the expectations are in Nashville, and those would be my expectations. But I say to myself, really, you're going to say that Vanderbilt is not going to win 5 games? Look at their schedule, Dave. I'm not saying that it's entirely winnable, but Charleston Southern, that's a win. Georgia State and Utah State, both should be wins. Now you're telling me that I have to beat anywhere between Virginia Tech on the road.
I was just asking you, Barry, what do you think about that game right now?
What, the Virginia Tech game?
Yeah, what's your thought? Remember, Virginia Tech opens up with 2 SEC teams.
If Virginia Tech is 0-2 to begin the season, Brent Pry needs to win the matchup against NC State to stay alive. Keep his job, in my opinion. You can't lose. If you were to lose to, say, an LSU in week 1, that's a little bit different. You can't lose to a team that has lost so much defensively and on the offensive personnel when it comes to the wide receiver position in terms of playmakers that are proven, like South Carolina, and then go back home to Lane Stadium and be embarrassed by Diego Pavia. You can't afford that. So I think that is what happens personally at this point. I am not believing in Virginia Tech until they prove me otherwise. And that's just me holding ground after last season, going way too in on them, being that breakout team.
What was that line open up again? 14.5, wasn't it?
What, for Vandy versus Tech? It was a 13.5, 14.5. It was
myself included. A lot of people loaded up on that. It was like, oh man, Virginia, that's easy money.
That was easy money.
Vanderbilt was not, and Vanderbilt controlled that whole game.
We didn't know what Diego Pavia was. I will say, I am lower on Vanderbilt than most people who think that they're under the radar. I think that they're properly rated in terms of they're probably the 12th team ranked in the SEC right now. 7-5, 6-6 is what I have them going, simply because of they didn't add anything at wide receiver. And you did lose some talent in the backfield. And you did lose some talent on the offensive line. And your defense is bringing in a bunch of transfers. So that doesn't mean that I don't think that they can win a couple of games. That doesn't mean that they can't get an upset. Missouri, Tennessee this year, they could win those games. They could. But if you're saying that, hey, this is a team that we need to be paying attention to as a dark horse to get to the college football playoff, that's where I got to pump the brakes, hold your hand, sit you down and say, listen, I know you like Vanderbilt. I like Vanderbilt. I think it's good when Vanderbilt is making plays and keeping things interesting in the SEC. But interesting does not mean wins. It means this is not a guaranteed loss for you. That's where I'm at with Vanderbilt.
Anybody announcing the Commodores this year as a playoff contender, I'll have a sip of what you're drinking on. But Barry, before we move to the next question, I got to ask you. We brought it up too many times. We're going to plug our buddies again over at FanDuel. Give me your favorite SEC team win total heading into the season. We got Bama 9.5, Arkansas 5.5, Auburn 7.5, Florida 6.5, Georgia 9.5, Kentucky 4.5, LSU 8.5, Mississippi State 3.5, Missouri 7.5, Oklahoma 6.5, Ole Miss 8.5, South Carolina 7.5, Tennessee 8.5, Texas 9.5, A&M 7.5, and as we just mentioned, the Vanderbilt Commodores at 4.5.
Texas is the favorite for a reason. I'm going to keep it at Texas. I just look at their roster and I say,
so that's your favorite team total. That's
it's not my favorite team total. It's the one that I feel the most confident is going to hit. My favorite is LSU because I think LSU is going to be. If you go 8-4, I'm sorry. At this point, you do not deserve to be a head coach in the SEC with that much talent. How much they were able to address in the transfer portal, what they currently have with veteranship at quarterback. I think if you have at least some stableness on the ground game, 9-3 should be the bare minimum for a Brian Kelly team that went 10-3 with really good quarterback play and great wide receivers, but a crappy defense. Went 10-3 with really underwhelming at the time wide receiver play, but still decent quarterback play and an underwhelming defense. And this is miles ahead in terms of overall personnel than what you had in 2022 and 2023. So it's like that's where my brain is you're too good on paper for me to say.
Some of it's a little bit of an expectation thing. Like you should.
A little bit. I would say that's
yeah, no, it's a total put up, shut up year for him. I thought you would go South Carolina 7.5 though.
Yeah, the wide receiver room right now, I gotta see a little bit more. Just a little bit more before I say 8-4. Jay writes in, who needs a bigger week one win more? Brian Kelly or Kalen DeBoer?
I like
this
that
is an easy one, right?
Man, you can make an argument for me either way, and I wouldn't argue with you. I'm going to go right now. I'm going to go Kalen DeBoer.
Really?
Yeah, because, I think LSU, Brian Kelly's proven before LSU doesn't want to lose 6 straight, even going back into an O is there, 6 straight season openers. Brian Kelly would be 0-4 at this point. But I think he's shown he's bounced back from he's bounced back before, losing to Florida State, going on to win the SEC West in his first season. I think for Kalen DeBoer, this would be what? Your second loss in a row, 3 out of your last 4 going back to the Oklahoma loss with your only win coming at home against a below 5-7 Auburn team. To start off a big year 2 for you, to go lose to this Mike Norvell Florida State team that is an inevitable dumpster fire right now. I don't care where the game's at. And if it was ugly looking again, I'm not saying it is. I think Alabama's going to be good this year. I don't think this happens. I'm just saying if they do lose in Tallahassee and it's ugly, man, you would really have to question. Again, I'm not for firing anybody after week 1 or anything like that. I mentioned that with Brent Venables and the Michigan take. But I do think that's where the wagons would start to circle, and it would not be good. I don't think it'd be good either way. But LSU is playing the tougher team, who's the favorite to win the ACC at their place. And Brian Kelly has shown he's lost week 1 and bounced back. So I think bigger for Kalen DeBoer. That'd be a bad loss.
It'd be a bad loss, but I'm sorry. You can't continuously lose week 1 when you're hyped up to be able to hold your own and constantly fall short. It's Brian Kelly. And the reason I say it's Brian Kelly is because of what do we know about LSU? They haven't won a week 1 opener since 2019. They constantly struggle when it comes to delivering on expectations year in and year out. They have the money to go out and be one of the best teams in college football. And I continue to preach this. As much as we want to talk about what went wrong with Brian Kelly last year, he's understood what the culture is and what are supposed to be the policies and the politics that go into that state. Look at the way that he went about building his roster. His staff this past offseason. Literally, it's riddled with people that have ties to the state of Louisiana. Like it's a government thing. It's a politics thing. He's done that part. The money that has been utilized that was going towards Bryce Underwood, going elsewhere. And it's gone to really good places in the secondary, at the front seven, what they've been able to target names on the offensive line, who they brought in at wide receiver. And it is Clemson. And whether or not I think that Clemson again, I will give a lot of credit to going into this year. If there is a team outside of, I would say, the Big Ten or the SEC that really stands a shot on going far in the playoffs, it is Clemson. But you're LSU, and you have been preaching that you're right there and that you believe that you are one of the premier programs in college football. You should win that game. And if Brian Kelly doesn't, there's going to be a negative shtick around him, much like there is when it comes to Kirby Smart talking about playing Alabama. You can't win week one. You just can't do it. It's not going to happen for you, BK. Move on. And remember that he almost lost week one in his final season at Notre Dame, too. So this has been a common thread that has followed him throughout his entire career in the last 5 seasons. So it's not like, hey, LSU, I join a team. Now it becomes a problem. I lose a lot week one, or I play too close for comfort. Kalen DeBoer, if he loses week one, it's a terrible look because of what Florida State is versus what you are. But if you end up going 11-1 for the rest of the year, that's your only loss. You're in Atlanta, you're going to the college football playoff, and it proves that you're the right guy. There are
but I
people
don't think that's
that
your only loss. I don't think that's your only loss, though, dude. If you lose that, that's my point. I mean, yeah,
probably not.
But won 11 straight games, which I mean, you got big problems if you're losing to this Florida State team.
If you're losing this Florida State team, you have problems. If you're getting blown out by this Florida State team, you have big problems, in my opinion. Knowing what I know about where Brian Kelly has been for the last several years and how much I defend him as a top 3 coach in the SEC, I'm sorry. I at some point have to put my foot down and say, Kalen DeBoer, I'll give you one more year. If you lose week 1 to Florida State, it's a bad loss, but you can recoup from this. LSU, you're trying to be a national championship contender. You want to be able to prove to everybody that Brian Kelly is the right guy and the moves that you made this offseason are pretty good. Go up to the other Death Valley and put belt to ass against Clemson. That to me is the big difference. But I also get where you come from in terms of, hey, look at who Florida State is. Look at who Clemson is.
Yeah. No, I agree. No, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, again, to be fair to LSU, it's a much tougher game.
Doug's McGee writes in, every quarterback ranking I see has Diego Pavia outside of the top 10. But do either of you have him in yours for 2025? And if not, where does he rank among the SEC passers going into 2024, going into this fall?
I'll be honest with you. I'm a little behind because of basketball season, guys. A couple weeks. I haven't had a top 10 yet, so I can't put it. But would I put Diego Pavia in my top 10 right now, just off the top of my head? He'd probably be just outside it.
He's number 12 for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Bear. Yeah, so I think 11 or 12 is a perfectly fine spot. No, I mean, I do think he is system-based. I don't think he could he's not like a Swiss Army knife. He could go.
Oh, no.
The system's married to him. He's married to the system. So I think that's why I'd put him a little bit. And Bear, I think where you have him at 12 is a good spot.
Would you have him in your top 5 for SEC quarterbacks going into this year?
Going into the season, knowing he plays in that Vanderbilt system, I'd put him right at 5. Yeah, I would.
So I'm trying to go.
And again, you can make an argument he finishes 7th to 9th. Because again, I do think this year is going to be a little different. People are going to have more film on this offense.
Yeah, sure.
Brought over from New Mexico State. They're going to have more film on Eli Stowers and Diego Pavia. So I think it's going to be a little different this year. Coach, the game adjusts. So I don't know if they're going to have as much success. I still think they'll be fine. I would lean with you right now too, Bear, go the over 4.5 win total. But it will be an interesting year for Clark Lee. And can they replicate it?
So looking at the quarterbacks going into this year for me, for the SEC, John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, that to me is one of the top 10. I have Garrett Nussmeier back for another season with Joe Sloan. I do have Lenore Sellers with Mike Shula. That is one of the top 5. Healthy DJ Lagway with Billy Napier. That's one of, in my opinion, the top 5. Then we get to that last range. And to me, this is where the Arch Manning conversation begins. Because on one hand, I want to give Arch a lot of credit and say the potential is through the roof. Being in the system for 3 years, it's worth noting that if he is as advertised, he will easily be one of the favorites to win the Heisman Trophy. He'll lead Texas to a college football playoff appearance. But he's had 95 pass attempts in 2.5 years of college football, where Diego Pavia in Tim Beck's system has been one of the more consistent forces, and we know what works. if I'm going based off potential, Diego Pavia would not be in my top 5 for SEC quarterbacks right now. But if we're going based off of what I know, yeah, he's in the top 5. And that's why I have him at number 12 on my list, because he's right there. And it's worth having it right there. And that's kind of also where, like, when you have these conversations, you have to sit and actually listen and say to yourself, am I going based off of potential or am I going based off of production? Because if you're going off of production, I don't know how so many people can have Arch as number 1 in the SEC for next year.
You can if it's just off raw production. Agree. I mean, you want to go off raw production? I mean, Diego Pavia is there.
He is. No, I mean, if we're going based off raw production,
Lenore Sellers.
If we're going based off raw production,
Nussmeier would be in there.
Nuss is probably number 1.
Just off pure production, yeah. I mean, Nussmeier's. I mean, it's probably that top 3 I just said: Nussmeier, Sellers, and Pavia.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you on that. I'm not saying that he can't be top 5, and I don't disagree. Like
Avery Green's another dude we all forget about at times. Just like, what's his improvement year 2 under Petrino?
I mean, Marcel Reed, I'm not entirely going to keep him out. Like, if he ends up taking the next step forward underneath Colin Klein, it's not that bad.
One of the bigger unknown years in the SEC at quarterback. Like, you could have some guys really take a big step in the right direction, be really good, or you could have some guys stay stagnant or even get worse a little, and it's like, ugh.
I will say that number 5 spot, that's really interesting to me. Like, in some capacity, I think that most people would have Garrett Nussmeier, Lenore Sellers, DJ Lagway, all in that same range. And then if you really, really like John Mateer's film coming on in from Washington State, the relationship that he already has with Ben Arbuckle, that's probably your top 4 in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying it's the only right one, but that's probably, I would say, in that realm.
There's a quarterback in this league. The league needs to be good as an overall.
Who's a quarterback that needs to be good?
The league needs to be good to set the tone for the quarterback position in this league. Do they need it? Is it Arch? Do they need Arch to be? Is it like if we just say Arch is average?
Arch needs to be good. He doesn't have to be elite. He doesn't have to be this guy that ends up leading Texas on every single drive into the end zone single-handedly. A guy that needs to be, I think, good, that needs to be the face of the league is Garrett Nussmeier or Lenore Sellers or DJ Lagway. And I'll even take Lagway out simply because of, look at what he did. I mean, like he's dealing with the injury. We know that he's throwing again. We know that he's going to be back in spring, but I'm willing to give him a benefit of the doubt. Lenore Sellers, what he did last season, you hired internally with your offense coordinator and Mike Shula. He's going to run a very similar approach to what Dow Loggins ran last year. And then Garrett Nussmeier, he's been there forever. More importantly, he has a full season underneath his belt. That's a guy that needs to be good to say that the league is actually trending upward, in my personal belief.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Ross B writes in, rank the pressure 1 through 5, with 5 being the hottest for Josh Heupel going into this season after the Nico situation. Is there a world where he is fired for how everything was handled?
Go ahead, Bear.
No, go. I'm.
No, you cut out. What was it? What was the last part?
Is there a world where he's fired?
Josh Heupel?
Yes.
I think his hot scale right now is at what, like a 2, probably out of 5 again. I mean,
to me, that was the dumbest question asked.
He's not getting fired this year. No,
that is
Tennessee went like 7-5 this year or something, and then
I don't think he would be fired. I think he would just leave to go elsewhere.
I don't think this year.
What I'm saying is that the only way that he's leaving Knoxville this year is if he takes a job elsewhere.
Oh, for sure. I'm saying just hypothetically, they go 7-5, 6-6, worst case scenario for Tennessee. I think next year it gets warm. Again, I'm not ready to say he was fired, but I think going into 26, if you told me Tennessee was 7-5 this year, underwhelmed, defense wasn't really good, so it looked like you've only had a pretty good defense for 1 year in your tenure in Knoxville. Yeah, I would say games don't look good against Georgia and Bama again. I would say in 26, if it got like that again, people would be pissed off. He'd have to have 2 back-to-back years of 6-6, 7-5, and I don't know if they'll do that.
So just bear with me and let me go rant for a second because this will probably get clipped for social at some point. I don't think Tennessee fans truly understand how good they have it with Josh Heupel. Not only has he gotten 2 10-win seasons since arriving from UCF, he has been to the college football playoff. He has allowed there to be a bigger boost in overall net growth when it comes to the NIL purposes. And they've also put their money where their mouth is in retaining as much talent as possible. There's a lot of things that you can point negatively towards Heupel last season. There's a lot of things that you can point negatively towards what's going to happen in the world of college football because of the Nico situation. But keep in mind that once upon a time, Tennessee was viewed as a powerhouse in the SEC. Tennessee was viewed as the way Alabama was viewed underneath Nick Saban with Philip Fulmer. And then Fulmer decided...
Come on, don't disrespect that. No.
It's not disrespecting. What I'm saying is that the level of consistency...
Tennessee was like how Georgia was with Mark Richt.
Sure.
With Fulmer.
Sure.
Without the national title.
My point is that Tennessee fans right now are feeling a little bit spoiled because remember what happened when Philip Fulmer kind of took a back seat and decided to go on the athletic side. You brought in Lane Kiffin. That didn't work out. You brought in Derek Dooley. That didn't work out. You brought in Butch Jones. That didn't work out. You brought in Jeremy Pruitt. That didn't work out. You do land Josh Heupel. Most people at the time were mixed about Heupel. He gets good quarterback play. He beats Alabama with Nick Saban for the first time ever in program history against him in the third Saturday in October. They get double-digit win seasons. They go to the college football playoff. And because of something went wrong in NIL, now he is quote-unquote on the hot seat. I get the offense took a step back. I understand that the overall persona of what we know about Tennessee going into this year has drastically changed. But would you take an 8-4 season to guarantee that 2 years from now, you're right back in the college football playoff? You're right back in the running for a number one recruiting class. You're right back in the running to be viewed as a national threat in the SEC. Or would you rather lose Heupel and have to hit the reset button like you've done with Pruitt, like you've done with Kiffin, like you've done with Dooley, like you've done with Jones? That's where I kind of draw the line in this BS when it comes to the Heupel stuff. Yeah, the whole Nico thing and the whole way the offense regressed last season, your patented baby, is a thing that is probably frustrating. But if you think for 1 second that Heupel is not the right guy in Knoxville after the whole thing that just occurred, I don't know what to tell you other than stop acting like the spoiled brat who just got a lollipop and wants the second one before she's done with the first one.
Yeah, again, I think two things to be true at once. You're right. I think you're 100% right. Tennessee's a proud program. Heupel has done a good job raising the bar of that season, this program. I think really setting the floor to 8 wins. I'll say this, though, Bear. You consistently not competing for championships at some point gets old. So it's going to be like what happened to Mark Richt. It's just, yeah, you can win 9, 10 games, but we don't really compete for anything. I mean, and again, they made the playoffs last year, but at some point, you're going to want to win a championship, some hardware. And again, just 9 wins in today's sport really does nothing for you. And again, what's just making the playoffs? At some point, that gets old. Again, not saying they don't make the playoffs this year. I thought they were a pretty good football team last year. You can say he's pulled them out of their worst era in their football history, but at the same time be like, hey, I don't know if we'll ever do enough to really win a championship there.
Maybe, but at this point, I'm not doubting Josh Heupel until you give me a reason to doubt Josh Heupel. Because if he's done something...
Until he starts winning big road games. I think even Tennessee fans have came around to that.
Sure. But when you tell me that this is the first coach since Philip Fulmer to get 2 10-win seasons, let alone 1 10-win season...
I think two things to be true. Well, I'm with you. I'm with you. He's turned them around. I just don't know if he's a championship contending. I don't think just because he turned them around, he is a championship winning coach. I'm not saying that.
Maybe.
That's what I think you're saying.
I'm saying that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt going into this year, even with regression on the offense from last season, because I've watched him win 2 10-win seasons with 1 inadequate quarterback and 1 quarterback that was phenomenal, but it was a hit and miss defense. I think the defense is going to be better. I think the offense is going to be...
You think the defense is going to be better than last year?
No, better than the 2022 season when they got 10 wins.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
I think the defense will be better. The secondary was god awful that year. You could cut through it with a plastic knife. That's how bad their secondary was. I mean, how many times did you watch this? They went back and forth with the blows.
They got better as the year went on. Outside that, South Carolina game was the anomaly of that season.
I mean, the Alabama third Saturday in October.
You got Bryce Young. I'm gonna get Bryce Young lit up everybody.
Sure. I mean, that's fine if you want to, but I think the defense will be better than that defense. I think the offense will be the same as it was last year, maybe a little bit worse, not incredibly worse, but probably around the same. So what does that mean? 9 wins, 8 wins. I don't think that they're missing a bowl game. I don't. I think that they won't be the same team that we maybe envisioned going into this year, but they won't be as bad as some people want to make it out to be just because they have Joey Aguilar starting over Nico Iamaleava. Next question from Frank J. What's the grade for new Oklahoma wide receiver Jer'Michael Carter? I think he could be our new number 2 weapon. So, like we do on this channel a lot, we haven't talked about it. Oklahoma got another receiver. Jer'Michael Carter comes on in from McNeese State. 6'4", good overall frame, about 204 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. Has a really overall good catch radius. Put up some pretty decent numbers last season when he was at McNeese. Could end up being a force. Not a great overall weapon, but definitely a weapon that you can target. Chose Sooners over Tennessee, Baylor, Utah, Vanderbilt. Graded in as the number 87 wide receiver in the transfer portal cycle on either period. In 2024, as a sophomore, he had 37 catches for 537 yards, 3 touchdown receptions. He also was one of the better wide receivers in yards after contact. He had 5 plays of over 40 yards downfield. So when I look at this, Dave, in a Ben Arbuckle offense, you're 6'4", you got decent speed, you got an overall pretty good catch radius. That's a win, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a win, but I think it's just like at this point at most spots in the spring, it's a depth piece. He's a winnable minus type of guy for me. Good, not great. Big catch radius, like you mentioned, strong kid. I think it's a good take. I don't know how good he'll be, but I agree with the take. Again, like we mentioned, this guy's not replacing Nick Anderson, but man, that would make you sick if you were a Sooner if he goes and has a really good year in Baton Rouge. I think this is a winnable minus type of guy. Depth piece across the board. I do know a lot of the other teams in the league didn't really go after him. It was this. I think a lot of this was a real Tulane, Oklahoma kind of battle back and forth. But again,
Tennessee got into it at the very end. Utah got into it at the very end, but it was mostly.
I heard it. They paid him like $400 is what this kid ended up getting. So I think there's a lot of teams who could have afforded that in this league that I think turned it down. But again, it's a depth piece, and this is a position of need for Oklahoma. So I like the take. You taking any kind of big body this late. How he'll perform, who knows? I think they get anything out of him. He's a 5th, 6th type guy. You'd be fired.
I'd put him as more so a 4th, 5th type guy, if we're being honest. Like, I think he's more in that range. Say he has the same production that he had when he was at the FCS level. So 37 catches for 533 yards.
I mean, that's going to drop, dude. There's no way he replicates that.
The thing is, what if he got that? What would that be? Would that be a winnable plus in your opinion?
Yeah. If he replicated that, I would still probably, yeah. I mean, that'd be very impressive by him to go replicate what he did at a much lower level.
If he got, let's say, 37 catches for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, that would
be a very productive get and worth your 400 grand.
You're 6'4". I mean, when you're that size and when you have as many explosive routes as you ran last season at McNeese, for a Ben Arbuckle system, I think it works for you.
Only Nick Saban hated 6'4" receivers.
Only Nick
Saban hated.
Only Nick Saban. No, I don't know. I agree with you. It's a winnable minus. It's a depth piece. It doesn't change the way I view Oklahoma. I still view them as a 7-8 win team. I mean, an 8-9 win team on paper. I think if they can get to that 10-win range, if things really start clicking, but that's a lot of ifs right there. An addition of Carter is not going to change. Hey, Oklahoma now, punch your ticket to Atlanta. You're going to make a run to the postseason. Like that. I agree on that sense. It's a winnable minus because the only way that I put you in a winnable plus is I think you can win a football game. I don't think that could be the case.
Agree, man.
Justin King writes in, name the most important game, it's your show, for the SEC that's not being talked about enough.
Ooh, how many? Let me put on my composite schedule there. How many did you say?
I got mine.
Go, you go first.
Yeah, it's Auburn, Oklahoma, week 4.
Oh, you said how many? 4?
No. It's Auburn, Oklahoma, week 4.
You're just saying one. You're just saying pick one game under the radar.
That to me is the most important game of the college football season that no
one
like that. About. Because let's think of it this way. Oklahoma, if they are as advertised and all these transfers that they brought in and Jim Nagy and the way their defense is still built underneath Brent Venables is able to now, instead of going to the Plains, welcome in Auburn, welcome in a solid overall offensive personnel and shut them down with the quarterback that used to play for them and didn't play in this game last year because of Michael Hawkins was the starting quarterback. That to me shows, okay, Oklahoma, now we can start having the legit conversation about 9 wins. I don't know if it'll be possible, but we can start having that conversation. The same thing goes for Auburn in that sense. If Auburn's going to be this team that comes and breaks out the way that you say so, and what's funny is that you and I both last week when we broke this down as our superlatives, You picked Auburn as your breakout team. I picked Oklahoma as my breakout team. One of us could be right in this. If you go into Memorial Stadium, if you beat Oklahoma's ass, if you take care of Brent Venables' defense, if Jackson Arnold lives up to expectations the way that he couldn't when he was playing for the Sooners, then that already changes, I think, a lot about what people are speaking with Auburn. Auburn on paper may have the best wide receiver room in the SEC, if not the country. Auburn may have one of the best defensive front sevens in the country. They may have a really strong secondary that has a couple of young players that you want to see take a step forward. But they're being coached up really good by DJ Durkin. And if they win that game on the road, and let's just say they beat Baylor, well, now that's 2 games against potential at the season's end ranked opponents that strengthens your odds of once again showing that Hugh Freeze is the right guy, the money that you're spending is equatable, and also probably most important, it's a game we look back in November and say, hey, if you win the Iron Bowl, you may not go to Atlanta, but you're going to the college football playoff. It's one of those matchups that carries so much underlying tones that needs to be discussed more, because if we talk about what a game like LSU versus Alabama is going to be, we talk about a game what Georgia versus Alabama is going to be, we talk about what Ole Miss versus LSU is going to be, we talk about what maybe a Tennessee versus a Georgia could be. We don't talk enough about this one team that maybe can make that necessary jump the way that South Carolina did last year, the way that Ole Miss tried to last year, the way that Missouri did last year. That could be Oklahoma. That could be Auburn. That week 4 game is a must circle in permanent marker. You have to be there to experience it.
Yeah, I'm going to go Bear. This is rival. They play every year. This is a rivalry game, but like I think nobody's really talking about it in the change of schedule this year. Florida, LSU, and Baton Rouge, week 3, September 13th game, usually later in the season. I think that's big for both teams. Massive. Again, LSU opens up with Clemson 2 weeks later. They're playing Florida at home. Both teams need a big year. We've talked about Brian Kelly. Billy Napier obviously needs it. Florida, the very next week, heads to Miami after LSU. Very next week, back-to-back games. Both these teams need to be 3-1 after their first 4 games. Both have tough non-conference opponents. Both have each other to play as SEC openers. I think this is a big one. Again, we know LSU, Florida, a lot of historic games. Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, Les Miles, Brian Kelly's had his. We know all these. Nick Saban, throw him in there. But I think this won't get a lot of juice going into the year, because I think people will be looking at LSU. People will be looking at that Ole Miss game as their first real big conference game, I think. And they're talking about the Clemson game. But I think this is an underrated tone setter for both teams.
Another one that I want to just throw out there, Florida's one of the teams, but it's A&M versus Florida. So A&M at this point will have played UTSA, Utah State. They would have traveled to South Bend and take on Notre Dame. Home against Auburn.
This year is later than that game was last year, wasn't it?
What?
It's later this year than it was last year.
Yeah, last year was week 3. This was week 7, I believe. You close out your season at Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, versus South Carolina, and at Texas. I don't think it's a must-win, but what I will say is that'll be a moment where if A&M loses, for them to guarantee at least a conversation going into the Lone Star Showdown, they're going to have to win out to go to the college football playoff. They're going to have to win out.
Barry, go ahead.
What?
No, go ahead. Sorry, I had another one for you.
I was just saying, I don't see a scenario right now where they will go into South Bend and beat Notre Dame. I think that it could be really interesting when they have to go play against Missouri later on in the year. I think it'll be really interesting when they have to go travel to LSU, because they don't win at LSU ever. Auburn, I think, is going to be more challenging. The Mississippi State game should be a win. So, like, when you look at this, A&M, there's an opportunity for them to be 6-0 after this matchup if all things go according to plan. Or at worst, 5-1. But if they lose that game and they lose to Notre Dame, you have to win out to guarantee your spot in the college football playoff. And I think the same thing could be said for Florida at the same point, too, because they'll have some tough matchups. They'll play Miami already. They'll play against A&M. So, like, there's a shot where Florida at this point, hey, we got Texas coming on up. We got to win that game too. Like, that's what we're talking about when it comes to Florida. You can't afford a loss.
Mine is Bear. If you're as high on the Sooners as you are, which I think is definitely possible for sure, them being the bounce back team. That second or third to last week of the season, that return trip to Tuscaloosa after what they did to Alabama last year. I mean, let's say Oklahoma's good fighting for a playoff spot. Let's say Ty Simpson's turned out to be pretty good. I mean, again, I think Bama's got the least amount of holes of anyone in the SEC heading into the season. Maybe not the depth, but the least amount of holes of anyone outside the quarterback position. What if both those teams are rolling in with one's rolling in with 2 losses or both teams are rolling into 2 losses. That could be an underrated, under the radar game late in the year that has playoff implications, not just for Alabama like it did last year, but for Oklahoma too heading in. So I think that's another one. We could throw a bunch of these really under the radar type. I don't consider Ole Miss LSU under the radar though.
Not under the radar just because of what we know about the way those two have played against each other.
Arkansas, Ole Miss very early this year in Oxford.
See, I look at Kentucky, Ole Miss just because of what happened last year. Like, it's not
high. I don't think Kentucky will be very good this year.
It's not great, but like at the same time, am I really going to doubt after what I said last season? Belt to ass out in Oxford, now going to Lexington. And remember, early on in the season, the 2 best games in SEC play for Kentucky were against Ole Miss and Georgia, and they were early on. So maybe it's like that's where your spark is, and then you fall off the track within 2 weeks. Like that.
Here's another. I think Jeff Lebby and State got to look competitive against Arizona State in that return trip for the Sun Devils to Starkville. I know they have Cam Levitt back, but they don't have Scattaboo.
Yeah, but they have Jordan Tyson. That's my only thing. They had Jordan Tyson.
No, I'm not worried. I think Arizona State will win the game. I'm just saying I don't think you can go get blown out.
Right, but like
Levy.
Okay, but do you remember who was really important in that game for Mississippi State? Kevin Coleman. Kevin Coleman's in Missouri now.
Yeah,
that's my
you know what was important. I mean, dude, it didn't matter what that game was a blowout. Scattaboo I think ran for 275.
Right, but that was also at least a decent game in the first half because you at least had a weapon that you could trust. You didn't have. I don't think you have that right now when it comes to Mississippi State. That's where
I think that'll be how much State's defense has improved more so than I think. I think State's offense could go put up some points on them this year if the offensive line can block. But again, Arizona State's not great up front either.
It can't get any worse. 2 more. Big Tex writes in, who is the biggest threat to the SEC in every other major conference going into 2025? So the ACC, I think both you and I have the right answer. Clemson. It's far and away Clemson. Is there even another team that you would throw into that realm of, hey, maybe things could go topsy-turvy and they could get a win against an SEC team?
In another ACC team?
Yeah. Is there another ACC team?
Miami?
Yeah.
Could beat any SEC team, yeah.
No. Like for a national championship.
No, no.
So
we're not really talking about like an SEC contender. Yeah, like I think Miami could beat Tennessee.
Yeah, but do you view Tennessee as an SEC contender? I guess would be the main point.
You're higher on them than I am. I don't.
Do you think they could beat Oklahoma?
Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah. On a given day, I think so.
See, my team that I'm really interested in right now is actually Georgia Tech. There's just something about the way that I think that they're built on the offensive line and what they had and what they brought in with Patterson and Eric Rivers from FIU. They lost Singleton, but I felt like they brought 2 guys that are really, really good. And they're going to have, I think, a stellar defense. Blake Gideon hire over Tyler Santucci is going to be something that will be really interesting to see how that transitions. But I still like the Yellow Jackets. I like Louisville's offensive personnel. I just worry about their defense. So, that's probably it. Big 12, if you had to pick a team, who would it be?
Big 12? Give me TCU this year.
Really?
Josh Hoover. Yeah, I've talked to some of them guys over there. They think they're going to have I think they're going to have their best year. I mean, it's not saying a lot since the 22 season, but still, I think they'll be pretty good.
I don't think that they have the best quarterback in the conference, but if I were to pick one, Texas Tech, with how much they spent in the portal, I mean, they just added in literally any single piece that you could imagine from every single conference and said, hey, do you want to go shoot up for the Red Raiders? Okay. And they put their money where their mouth is. And so they're not built like a Big 12 team. They're built like a Frankenstein monster filled with bits and parts of every conference of superstar potential and huge upside. They're going to be a really interesting roster because if the quarterback play is sufficient, I think they could easily run their way to Arlington and punch their ticket to the college football playoff. And depending on where the game is, they may end up winning a game in the first round. Like that's how well I advise Joey McGuire, just for how much they've put in. But again, we also know this about transfer portals. Sometimes you bring in a lot of players and they just don't mesh. And when they don't mesh, it's just a full-on disappointment. That's all it is. So maybe that's the case. Big 10, if you had to pick one, I mean, Ohio State feels like a pretty safe answer. Michigan, you could probably throw in as a dark horse. Oregon, absolutely. Penn State, if not now, when, I guess is the big question.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I know we're an SEC channel, but I do think the SEC to their own standard is down right now. So to your point, Bear, I'm with you. This is the Big Ten's chance. This is Penn State's opportunity.
I wouldn't even say the SEC is down per se. What I'll say is that holy shit, Penn State, if not now, when? Because Michigan's breaking in a brand new quarterback. Oregon's breaking in a brand new quarterback. Ohio State's breaking in a brand new quarterback. Two of them are breaking in new coordinators. You lost a lot of talent at all three of those schools. You retained most of your talent on the offensive side. You got better at the wide receiver position. You just brought in Pena, who had a great year at Syracuse last season. You still have a really, really good front seven. You have a good secondary, and you brought in the defensive coordinator that was fresh off of winning a national title. Like, if not now, Penn State, when? I'm sorry, but when is it going to be? Because if everything is there for you to be successful this year. And I mean everything.
So who are you going with in the Big Ten, man?
Penn State. I'm like, and it pains me to say that because I truly think that Penn State is one of those teams that until I see it, I can't believe in you. And I've been burnt so many times by you before. But what else am I supposed to say at this point? Because literally everything is there for you to be the best team in the Big Ten. Like, if you ask me to make my preseason prediction right now, they'd be Big Ten favorites.
I'm going to go the Ducks.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Last question before we move on to the schedule. Which quarterback faces more pressure going into 2025? Auburn's Jackson Arnold or Texas A&M's Marcel Reed? Elliot Q wants to know.
I'm going to go Marcel Reed. I'm going to go Marcel Reed just because the standard at Auburn at quarterback play the last 2 years has been set so low that I think Auburn fans are so jaded that the expectation, they're like, I think they trust Jackson Arnold can be better than those guys. And I think most of us can. Most of us do. But I think they're a little hesitant and gun shy where they're like, hey, we're going to see it before we truly start believing it. So, but I think A&M fans are a little bit more hook, line, and sinker with Marcel Reed taking that next step in year two. With Casey Concepcion, your boy, coming over. They got a lot more weapons this year, Terry Bussey and the boys. I think, again, I know Jackson Arnold has the receivers outside. But again, I want to see that offensive line for Auburn truly take that next step. Like, I'm high on them, but I want to see him take that next step. And I just think Auburn's expectations right now at the quarterback spot are just lower than what A&M is going to have rolling in, I think, for Marcel Reed. I think it's more of a put-up, shut-up year for Marcel Reed more so than it is for Jackson Arnold.
Yes, I agree with you.
Sorry, Barry, let me do one last sentence. At the school he's at. Sorry.
Sure. Okay. Here's what I will change. I agree with you that Marcel Reed faces pressure and that this is a prove-it year for him at Texas A&M and that he's got a good run game. He's got himself a pretty decent offensive line. He's got himself some weapons. He's got himself a tight end. He's got himself an offensive coordinator that knows what the mobility aspect of his game is going to embrace and elevate the staff. So I will give you that. I flipped to Jackson Arnold for one main reason. They're built, I think, right now to be in that sleeper conversation as an SEC threat. A&M to me is still at 8-14 because I have questions on their defense. I have questions on the secondary. I have questions with their pass rush. I still think that they're missing some elements. It'll be better in the back end this year because they ranked like 90th in pass coverage in 2024. It'll be better, but is their pass rush going to be better when they only really have Cassius Howell and insert a bunch of young up-and-comers? I'm not sure. So with A&M, I can say and justifiably go, hey, you're 8-4 this year. You have some pieces in line. You have some really good offensive play. But Marcel Reed maybe cost you a game or your defense cost you a game. I don't feel that way about Auburn right now. Auburn, to me, I think has a defense that is good enough to keep them in every single game. I think they have the best wide receiver core in college football, at least on paper. And certainly they have the best wide receiver core in the SEC. I think the offensive line is fine. It's not elite, but it's fine. And so I add all of those elements together. And I say, Jackson Arnold, just be a facilitator. Be the best point guard possible. Know your place. Understand your assignment. Put yourself in a prime position to where you're connecting, building a rapport with Cam Coleman. You and Eric Singleton are on the same wavelength. You got really good consistency with the tight end position. You really know how to do a check down pass out of the backfield to Damari Alston. You really are able to know when to tuck and run. Just be smart with the football. Be a good facilitator. Do all of the minor things really, really efficient. They're going to be a 9-win team. I can't say that about A&M. I think that when you look at Marcel Reed, even though he has a great run game, even though he has some weapons, there are going to be some moments where they say, hey, dude, we're going to need you to go ahead and step it on up. Our defense is getting cooked left and right, and we can't add pressure onto our quarterback. So if he ends up losing that game, but it's close, maybe you can talk yourself into, well, it wasn't all Marcel Reed. There were other faults. If you end up losing a game because of a bad interception with Jackson Arnold, with that weaponry, with that offensive line, with that defense bailing you out of trouble, time after time after time after time, that to me means that you face more pressure. Because the turnover was a main issue that we heard about all throughout his tenure when he was at Oklahoma. Is it going to be a main issue that heads into this season? And what do we know about Auburn? Dave, they were one of the best teams last year when it came to offensive personnel consistency. They were terrible in one major category, turnovers. You just can't have the turnovers. They were awful. They could have been 8-4 last year and maybe even 9-3. There were like 4 games that they should have won, but the Kip Lewis interception, the 4 interception game against Cal, the way that you played against Arkansas with the back and forth turnovers. I mean, right then and there, that's a 7-5 team. Just don't do that, Jackson Arnold. And to me, when you also factor in, he was considered by many one of the better quarterback prospects coming out of Denton Guyer. There's a little bit more added pressure for you to succeed. Just a little bit, in my opinion. So
yeah,
I
think the expectations from the fan base is a little bit different. You know what I mean? I just think if Jackson Arnold was okay and they won 8 games, but Marcel Reed was just average and A&M ended up winning 6, I think his A&M fans would be a little bit more fed up with him. Because Arnold will come back and prove himself in a year or two at Auburn.
But okay, but flip it this way: if Jackson Arnold ended up being average and they went 8-4, and Marcel Reed was great, but A&M went 7-5, A&M fans would feel really good about the quarterback position. They'd have questions on the defense. There'd be a lot of people, I think, out at Auburn saying, "Why are we 8-4 when we have all this personnel and the way that our offense, like our defense, played, and we just had so many bad play after play after play with interceptions and turnovers?" That might be the difference. Better record because of better personnel for an Auburn team.
Yeah, I think Auburn fans, no matter what, would be fine with 8-4. If he came back and developed, I think they'd be fine. Again, I don't think they expect him to come winning 9-10 games this year.
I don't think
I'm higher on him than most. I didn't see many people go say they win 9.
I don't think that they expect him to win 9 or 10 games this year. What I do think is that if you start to gain some momentum, you win that matchup against Baylor, you win that matchup against Oklahoma, you feel good going into the month of October, then maybe it alters. Like going into the year, you go 8-4. I think a lot of people are okay with that. If you are like 5-0 at one point, if you're getting to 6-0, opinions change overnight. Now it's like, hey, you can't lose your last.
I think at that point they probably do win 9 games. If they start 6-0,
it's possible. I mean,
that means they'd have to lose. They go at 3-6 down there, or they go 2-7 down the stretch or something. Or
they would go. Yeah, they would go 8-4. They would go 2-4 down the stretch.
Yeah, which I think they have. I like them against Vandy this year. I just think their personnel is better.
Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels. And if you haven't already, go visit FanDuel.com. FanDuel is here to make every moment count more. The app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Already have an account? Go visit FanDuel Sportsbook offers, which has great promotions for everyday, all-day users, like profit boost tokens, new features like a parlay hub, build your own same-game parlay, or choose from one of the popular SPG already man-made parlay hubs for you. And if you haven't signed on up, well, now is the perfect time. Just go to FanDuel.com/SECU to learn more. And when you lay down your first $5 bet, you win that bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets. So stop wasting your time. Go visit FanDuel.com/SECU and get in the action with more offers that you won't want to miss. Disclaimer: must be 21 and present in select states or in DC 18+. First online real wager money only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus withdrawable with non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering under Kansas and the agreement of the Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinglinehelpma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, let's go on to continue our scheduling. So at the end of the show, moving forward, we're going to break down a schedule for all 16 teams. We already did Alabama. If you want to check out that video, go to the channel. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on the socials. That way you see it drop. It's coming out tomorrow. Let's go break down Arkansas. Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, Ole Miss to begin the year. Then Memphis, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, LSU, Texas, Missouri. Dave, I don't know who hates Arkansas, but somebody hates Arkansas. Every single year, I feel like I'm reading a schedule that is just absolutely, yeah, we know that we're a 7-5 team.
Yeah, I mean, the Notre Dame game on September 27th is in a really weird spot, isn't it? Just the fifth game of the year. It's just random. And then think about it. They get A&M at home this year. The game's at home in Fayetteville this year.
For the first time since 2013?
Yeah,
14?
I think it was something like that. Yeah. I think they were playing in Jerry's World in 14, but you're right. I think it was 12 or 13.
24 or 13, yeah.
But no, you're right, man. I mean, tough schedule. You dropped Oklahoma State for Notre Dame. Again, I think Notre Dame at home, if you got them, I kind of like it better if you got them earlier in the year by that point. I mean, again, Notre Dame has some holes. They lost Al Golden to Cincinnati, lost some guys on the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, yeah, I think it potentially could be a winnable game at home in Fayetteville for sure. Do I think they win it right now? Probably not. Again, I'm not very high on Arkansas's personnel, especially on defense heading into the year. Don't really like the receivers outside of Taylor Green and just being Bobby Petrino's second year. Not high on the Hogs, but you're right. I mean, there's no sugarcoat it, Barry. You hit hammer on the head with that one, dude. Tough schedule.
Most winnable conference game, in your opinion?
Winnable conference. It's got to be Mississippi State at home, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
If you had to pick another one, would you say it would be A&M? Would you say it would be Auburn?
Maybe Missouri at home if Missouri's not really living up. But they never win that game.
Yeah, that's my thing.
And I don't think Arkansas is going to be very good either. Hey.
It's Mississippi State. I mean, like,
yeah,
it feels like it's Mississippi State or bust right now.
I mean, think about it. Sam Pittman may not even be coaching in that game against Missouri.
Now, what's the most winnable game? Alabama A&M? Oh,
just on the schedule? Yeah, the SWAC team, Alabama A&M, the Bulldogs.
Easy loss.
The loss I'm most confident in.
You're already marking it up. It's a permanent marker down the L.
I'm gonna go at LSU.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna be very good. LSU will be better than them. And then, dude, if they're not very good at that point, the writing's on the wall for Pittman. That team may quit.
Can I just be honest and say it's gonna be Missouri because they don't ever win that game? So at this point, why would I start believing that they will win that game? Like, there's something about the Texas matchup that I'm circling. I'm saying they're probably not. But for some reason, they beat Texas before when they came to Razorback Stadium and they were in the Big 12 Sark's first year. It was a competitive game last year at times to where you were kind of just sitting and wondering, hey, is this going to end up being in favor? Is there going to be one or too many mistakes to where Arkansas will actually stand a chance? They just don't beat Missouri. Like, they just never beat Missouri.
No,
and I feel like that's just what I got to chalk up. Because A&M, I could see a scenario where they do it. Auburn, I could see a scenario where they do it. I could see a scenario where they lose, where they beat LSU, and it's just like the prime time event for an ultimate letdown by Brian Kelly.
Here's the question: where does Sam Pittman have to be after the Tennessee game? What does his record have to be to survive, in your opinion?
3-3, or 3-4.
I mean, you got to get the first. I mean, geez, if you lost Arkansas State in the Little Rock, all right. So, giving your first two,
you have
to lose at Ole Miss. Think you lose to Notre Dame. You got to get Memphis. Yeah, I mean,
so I would say
you're right. He's still got a fighting chance. You're right. If he's
3-4, if you're 3-4 in that stretch, to where you play A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State next, you still have a shot to survive. At least for now, I would say. 3 must-win games, in your opinion.
3 must-win.
Yeah, I'm gonna caveat it and say you can't have Alabama, A&M being one of them,
or Arkansas State. I mean, if you're trying to.
That's a must-win.
Oh, you got to win that. I'm just going to give them. I'm going to give it. I think, Memphis is one you got to get. Mississippi State's another one you got to get. And for me, dude, that last 3 games, LSU, Texas, Missouri, like I'm not even including them because I think at that point, I think we're going to have a good feel for his future. And if it's already the writings on the wall, I'm not going to count. So for must win, for them to have momentum rolling into that last month, they're going to have to collect some wins early. So I think it's Mississippi State, Memphis, and I'm going to go. I'm going to go Texas A&M.
So you said Mississippi State, Memphis, Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I'm the same 3. So we don't have to spend a lot of time. The A&M one I think is really interesting because if you were to play that game in College Station, I probably would say let's Let's flip it to Auburn. Let's flip it to LSU. Let's flip it to Ole Miss maybe. But it's in Fayetteville. Like, as much as I want to say the Tennessee game, you should be able to at least play confident football because of, if I'm just going straight off a quarterback, Taylor Green is miles ahead of what I think Joey Aguilar is right now. But you're playing it in Neyland. That's going to factor in. A&M.
Bear, listen to this. I 100% agree with you. They have to collect wins at home. Their road conference schedule at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at LSU, and at Texas. I don't think you get any of those. So
you don't. If you had to pick one, which one is the most winnable?
Out of those four?
Yes.
Ole Miss, LSU, Texas, and at Tennessee. Probably at Tennessee or at Ole Miss. You get Ole Miss early.
I think it's at Ole Miss is the most winnable because we don't know what we're going to get in quarterback.
No, I agree. You get them early.
But like at the same time, I'm also saying to myself, Tennessee, October 11th. At that point, we're going to know what Joey Aguilar is as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And so if he's not living up to expectations, you may turn to Merklinger at that moment. Can you take advantage of a kid that's probably in his first or second real legit game where he is seeing significant reps?
No,
like
you're right. You can make an argument for either Ole Miss or Tennessee. You're not wrong.
Ceiling and floor. What's the ceiling for this Arkansas team this year?
All right, Bear, let's spell it out here. All right, best case, Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, Memphis State are wins, 4 wins.
That's 4 wins.
Those are your best, your 4 wins. Let's just say you get 2 conference wins at home. You beat A&M and you beat Missouri. Let's just say hypothetically, there's 6. I don't think you're winning a road conference game as we stand right now. So there's 4 losses. So that comes down to 2 more. It comes down to the 2 games of Notre Dame and
Auburn.
To me. Dude, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I hate saying this because I have buddies on that staff. Dude, I think the ceiling of this team is 6. I hate saying that. I just don't think this is going to be a very good football team, man. And to your point, how you not started us off, this is a tough schedule.
7-5 is, I think, the ceiling, and it's all based off Taylor Green play. If Taylor Green can elevate the roster year 2 with Bobby Petrino as his offensive coordinator, Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, Ole Miss, Memphis, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State are all winnable games, and Missouri. So there's 9 winnable games if your quarterback is going to meet expectations. You're not winning all those games, but they're all winnable games. So I think 7-5 is the ceiling for this Arkansas team. I still like their defense. I like some of the additions that they brought in the portal, but you got to realize that Travis Williams also lost a lot in the back end of the secondary, which is going to maybe be a good thing because there were times that it was hit and miss, but there were also so many times where it was awful. So like there's that factor that you have to throw into it. It's
Bear, defensively, the only 2 guys I like personnel-wise for them is Xavier Sori, inside backer, transfer from Georgia, played well last year. And then Cam Ball on the defensive line, but Cam Ball's been out since January, did not participate in the spring. He's going to be out all summer. They won't get him back till fall, so he won't be working out. He won't be conditioned. I love Travis Williams, but his defenses regress as the season goes on. He starts to get figured out. So, I mean, I hate saying this, but I'm just not high on the Razorbacks in 25. The floor there, that's your next question?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go 2. I'm in too positive a mood, so I'm going to give them 3. 3 and 9 is the floor. And I think 6 and 6 is the ceiling.
I think 2 and 10 is the floor.
Dude, I was trying to be nice. Dude, I mean, it wouldn't shock. I mean, Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State, I would say
they're the only guaranteed wins.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if one's a guarantee.
If Mississippi State was early in the year, maybe. I wouldn't say guaranteed, but you'd feel a lot better. But again, to my point, what's their record rolling into November?
Do you even have a head coach by the time you play Mississippi State?
He loses that, he's probably fired.
But like, if that's his last game, then you're out of a job. But if it's not his last game, then you're stuck. And that's a problem. And that's what I hate. That's what drives me nuts with the schedule, is that like, I want to say that 3 and 9 is possible, but you can't promise me. Right. But what I'm saying is you can't, or let me phrase that. The 3 and 9 should be the floor, but you can't sell me that somehow after the way that you played against a 3 and 9 Oklahoma State team, that you would find a way to mess it up being up by 20 against Ole Miss, or being up by 10 against Memphis, or being up by 15 against Mississippi State. I can't buy into it because of how much you lost and how much of this portal took out of you in the winter cycle, and you weren't able to recoup it. So like, there's a world where 7-5 is absolutely on the table. There's also a world where they lose to Memphis in week 4 and they say, "No, we're done. No, this is ridiculous. We can't do this. We're done." And they just pack it on in for the rest of the year.
No,
there is that possibility.
That's a realistic scenario, like you said. No, I mean, where's the bye week at in the schedule, Bear? I'm doing the dates, 27th. Oh, there it is. So it's after Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Before you go on the road to Tennessee. Like, what's your record after that Notre Dame game and you have a week off, kids are going home, they're hearing from everybody? Like, I mean, like you said, if you're 2-3 and you have a Memphis loss next year, people can swallow the Ole Miss and Notre Dame losses, but the Memphis loss and, God forbid, Arkansas State. But
then also remember, think about it this way. That game against Mississippi State, it's a fireable game because of what happens next. Bye week before you play your last 3.
Agree. He loses to Mississippi State, and that puts them totally out of bowl contention. Hunter Yurachek is going to have to fire him that Sunday.
Yeah.
You hate saying that, but it's just the truth.
It's the reality. All right. Well, we both agree. Probably in that bowl range at best.
What'd you say, Bear? I said ceiling 6 and
I said 7.
3. What'd you say?
So you and I lliterally just are off by 1.
Yeah, we flipped. Yeah.
You're 6-6 for ceiling. I'm 1 higher when it comes to ceiling. You're 3-9 on floor. I'm 1 lower on floor.
You're 2-10.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I can see where it gets to 2-10 though.
Like the video, hit subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels. We will be back on Monday. We will have another jam-packed show. Who knows what we're talking about? Probably at least some transfer portal additions. Probably a couple of other things. We also may have a guest. We're working on that right now. But we are going to be speaking about Auburn's schedule. Where do the Tigers rank going into 2025? For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Make sure that you follow us on all the social channels. Dave Shumate SEC, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. And make sure that you're checking out all of our great work found on social media. And make sure that you're just following us on everywhere else. It's been a long day. I'm really tired. Dave's really tired. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Take care. God bless. And remember, you only live one life. Live it to the fullest.